both of these things, the toxic nature of ideology and the importance of the felt presence of immediate experience, can be brought together under the notion that we cannot afford the continued existence of what has been called throughout most of the 20th century the unconscious. That the unconscious is actually a kind of neurotic excuse for not getting our act together as a species. It is a kind of infantilism, a giving of permission by each of us to all of us to not get our act together. And the way in which the unconscious is eliminated is by turning the language machinery back upon itself and reflecting on the process of attention. This is what Buddhism is all about. Attention to attention, awareness of the modality of the cognitive process. Don't be fooled by yourself. Don't be made a sucker of by yourself. Just rise above that possibility by paying attention. Attention to attention causes the light of language to fall into these dark and unilluminated corners where infantilism is tolerated in the individual personality. To oneself has a kind of a morphogenic field effect, a kind of chain reaction which sweeps through society. This is, I believe, what all these gurus are always trying to say in a somewhat, I don't know, more concrete and therefore somewhat less convincing fashion. But it's simply that the act of conscious self-inspection creates more conscious people, which create a more conscious society, which erodes the possibility of the poisonous and toxic effects of ideology. This is what psychedelics were and are about in terms of their social position and their legal position in society. Psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally laid down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you know is wrong. And, government and society spend a lot of money educating you into being a loyal worker, consumer, debt payer, and citizen. So if anarchy is to have a meaning, and I think it is the great future for human society, because what it means is only responsible human beings can exist in an anarchistic society. To the degree that people are responsible, we will have anarchy. So in the light of all this silliness, it would seem logical, I think, to go back and have a scientific review and a complete revision of the scheduling of these drugs. Look at the scheduling anyway. Schedule 1, what is it? Compounds with absolutely no medical use whatsoever. Cannabis is in there, even though it's the preferred treatment for glaucoma and for chemotherapy to suppress nausea in chemotherapy. Heroin is in there. And then all psychedelics. You move to Schedule 2, and the first thing that jumps out of you is cocaine is Schedule 2.
marijuana is considered to be a more dangerous and devastating drug than cocaine. Why? Because, by the rules of the game, cocaine is used in certain medical procedures to anesthetize the optic nerve sometimes and to anesthetize nerves in the throat for certain forms of surgery. So because it has this obscure medical use, it's Schedule II. And this doesn't make any sense at all. These drug laws have never been rationally put in place. The original stigmatization of cannabis was carried on by the Hearst newspapers because they spent a huge amount of money buying Canadian forest for newsprint, just as the hemp industry was beginning to develop as a supplier for paper. And when they realized that they had badly invested in Canadian timber, they decided that they would put the hemp industry out of business. And so they discovered that it's marijuana among those wily, dark-skinned folks south of the border who are so unclean and peculiar, and they began to attach it to a stigmatized racial group and managed to hound it out of existence. This game has never been played fairly. It has always been played to benefit markets, capitalists, and producers. It has never been handled in a rational and scientific manner. And we just simply need a rational process that serves who? That serves the user, not the producer, the purveyor, or any. But these are medicines. They should be subject to the same standards of purity and so forth that the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, what's always put against drugs is that they're unclean and dirty. But that's because they're made in illicit, clandestine labs that have been forced underground by witless government policies. And now, it's not even a matter of debate. We've got the Dutch data. We know that when you legalize drugs, people don't immediately start smoking reefer 24 hours a day and committing acts of public fornication. That hasn't happened anywhere. That's a fantasy of the Christian right wing. No, all that happens when you legalize drugs is that people continue to do what they've been doing, whether they use drugs or not. So it's a shell game. And if any of you ever reach positions of policy making or influence on policy making, I hope that you will try to input into this process and rationalize it, because it's one of the great unregulated scams on the planet. And millions of people are being victimized. Third world poverty is being exacerbated. Criminal syndicalism is flourishing. Ordinary law-abiding people are being criminalized. People are being made to feel guilty about simply trying to understand their own spiritual yearnings and their own place in the cosmos. It's a tragic situation, and it's retarding cultural transformation.